Greetings, folkaroos. It's Hailey, and I'm back with you once again to review a chess meetup. And this one, folks, was definitely a good one. It was my best showing so far. You see, I've added the GM title next to my name because, folks, this time I went undefeated, 5-0, and we're gonna look at all five of those games and see how I did it. I definitely still made lots of mistakes, but not as many as before, and not as bad of mistakes as before. So, without further ado, let's hop into the first game. So, when I walked in, I played two games against Gary. We've seen him a couple times before, and the game started out pawn to e4. Let's start the review. My computer's being a little slow today, so we'll see how this goes. 91.1% accuracy on this first game. As you saw in e4 c6, this is my Caro-Kann defense. This is my favorite opening, the first one I ever learned. d4, d5, we're going down the main line. And Gary makes a fatal decision. He decides to play the exchange variation, which, as you may or may not know, is the most solid, positional, strategic variation of the Caro-Kann defense. And as you may or may not know, I am a very strategic and positional player who loves these kinds of positions. So if you want to beat me, then you probably don't want to play a position like this. So as you'll see, this leads to his downfall. Bishop to e3. So the main line here, after the exchange, is to play bishop to d3, just developing the bishop. Then black plays knight c6, attacking the pawn. Then white defends the pawn and restricts the knight's forward momentum. Then black plays e5. Black plays e5, takes, and takes, hitting the bishop. And then queen e2 pins the knight to the king, then queen e7. This is actually the main line. It's very, very just even, and you'll get to an endgame pretty quickly. Bishop to e3 is a slight inaccuracy, because remember how I've always been saying, you want to develop your knights usually before your bishops, except in the main line of the exchange, which is bishop d3, and then you develop your knights. But Gary has shown that he does not know that principle. He always develops his bishops first. This is what I've noticed about Gary. Yeah, so I go knight c6, which usually would be an attack on that pawn, but he defends it, but at the cost of maybe weakening b2 and this pawn for future queen b6s or stuff like that. So queen to d2. This is that I knew this was wrong in the game because I could just play knight f6 and maybe play knight e4 and just immediately go after that queen. But I could also just develop my bishop extremely actively out on this diagonal and pressure the pawn, and then just play e6, and then knight f6 and knight e4, and I have a very, very, very solid position. Knight f6, knight e4. He plays this random h3, and I get my knight into the center of the board, targeting his queen. And if he moves the queen, let's say he moves the queen, and I play e6, and he tries to kick my knight out, I just plant on g3, and I hit this, and I hit this, and it's just very good for me. So queen d3, he moves out of the way, and I play knight b4, which is an attack on the queen, but it is not the best move, because the best move in this position was to play bishop f5. Setting up a x-ray or a discovery threat against that queen. And if he does nothing, then you want the bishop to attack the queen, but you want the knight to also be guarding the bishop. So you can't play a move like this, hitting it twice, because the queen just takes the bishop. So what you have to do is play knight to g3, which simultaneously attacks the rook, defends the bishop, and attacks the queen. So when the queen moves, you're just going to take the rook. That's what you need to do. So queen d3, knight b4, and then he plays queen to b5, forcing me to go back, right? But I thought he was going to go here in the game. I thought that he was going to play queen to b3, in which case I would play e6, defending my knight with the bishop. And if he played c3, kicking me out, then I would just go back and maybe play a5, a4. This is what I was calculating. But he plays queen b5. I just back up anyway. And you may be asking, like, Hailey, why did you do this if he could just check you and you have to go back? Well, the reason I like this is because his queen is kind of out in no man's land. Like, not a lot of his pieces are supporting it. And I could just, it could become a target with like bishop to d7, and I could like take a pawn and hit the queen. And there's like, it could run into some difficulties being so far pushed up into my position. But anyway, knight there, and then he goes knight f3, just developing a piece. And I play e6 because I'm not worried about shutting my bishop off on this diagonal, because the bishop is going to go on d7 and challenge the queen, right? Like, you don't, if your bishop's developing here, you don't need to be worried about blocking this diagonal. a3, bishop d7, queen b3. So he gets out of the way of a discovery. Like, if he just left his queen there, then I was gonna like maybe take on d4 and hit the queen and threaten this, and it's just very bad. So queen b3, knight a5. I play knight a5, attacking the queen, and he can't go here because of the bishop. He can't go here because of this bishop, and he can't go here. So I figured he would have to go queen to d3, and then I was just going to play rook to c8. Just putting my rook on the half-open file, and if he played a move like b4, then I'd be happy because I could just plant my knight on c4 going after this and attacking these dark squares, and it's just very juicy. But he goes knight e5, and I play bishop to a4. This is a direct attack on the c2 pawn. And you may be like, well, Hailey, can't he just go here? Well, if he went there, then my idea was to play f6, attacking his knight, and he's attacking my bishop. B takes a4, f takes c5, and if he took this pawn, then I would have knight to c4. Attacking this, I'm the dark squares, and my knights are just teaming up very nicely on the white position. And if he tried to defend his e4 pawn, or I'm sorry, e5 pawn with f4, then I would have the move queen h4 check. Remember what I said about these dark squares? He just gets killed on the dark squares. I actually calculated most of that line, but he didn't play b3. He played knight to c3, which is even better for me because I'm able to take and damage his structure. Because he can't take because the rook is there. Remember, I put the rook on the half-open file. This is why putting rooks on squares like that is very useful. So I damage the pawn structure, and then I go queen to c7, which is a very useful move because it double attacks the c3 pawn, and it defends f7. You may be like, well, Hailey, your king's already defending the f7 pawn. But as you'll see later in the game, that actually becomes very important that the queen is defending this 7th rank. So he goes bishop to d2, he defends his pawn, right? And then I play bishop to d6. I play bishop to d6 and not f6 because I figured that if I could attack the knight and develop a piece at the same time and not have to push my f-pawn yet, then I'd probably want to do that. Bishop to d6, and if he tries to play like f4 or something, defending the knight, then I could play f6, and if he backs up, then I could just play knight to c4, and it's very bad because like I'm gonna take and just wreak havoc on his position. So queen to g3, right? He attacks my g7 pawn and defends the knight. This seems like a good move, right? It's actually not, and I find the correct response. Notice that the knight and the queen are lined up, right? f6. The knight can't move or else the bishop takes the queen. And remember what I said about this queen being on c7? He cannot take the g7 pawn because the queen is guarding it. If the queen was on d8, then he could take on g7 and hit the rook, and that wouldn't work. So the only reason this works is because the queen's on c7. So yeah, f6, f4 takes, and then I play bishop to f8, guarding my pawn, getting out of the way. But I missed bishop to e7 in this position because I can sacrifice the pawn because I have bishop h4 with a discovered attack on the queen. I missed that, but bishop to f8 is still fine because he goes bishop d3 and I play knight to c4. I'm looking to take and then take with check right here, and it's just going to be very bad for him. Queen f2 takes, and no matter which piece he takes with, I'm just going to take on c3 with either check or the threat to win a pawn and trade. And there we go. I win a pawn and trade. Rook c1. Rook c1 does defend this, but it does lose this pawn. And he can't go here and threaten the stacked bishops because my rook is defending the front bishop, and none of his pieces can evict this rook from its square. So I'm just going to castle, and I might bring my rooks over here and double up. I might dominate the open f-file. There's just many things that I could do to further my goals in this position. Castles takes. He just gives up his rook for whatever reason. And then I pull up with the move 26 castle, cutting his king off from coming into the center of the board and taking the open file. Rook to a1 attacks my bishop, but I just take. And then he takes, I take, and he takes the pawn. So he gets a pawn, but it doesn't really matter because I put both of my rooks on the 7th rank, or the 2nd rank in this case, and just dominate his king. Like, I'm cutting him off completely. He's never going to be freed from the prison of the 1st rank, and he can take if he likes. That's what he did in the game, but I'm just going to go here, king f1, and then go here. I'm just going to go here. And if he doesn't take, like, let's say he goes like there, then rook g to c2 threatens checkmate with either one of these rooks going up, and he can't stop it. So he has to be very careful to not lose the game very quickly here. So I'm pretty sure trading the rooks was one of the only moves. And now, obviously, I just have a rook king g1. I just pick up the rest of the pawns. And then I sacrifice a rook because the king is not in time to stop the promotion, and he resigns, like he resigns after d4 because he realizes he can't stop it. All right. And that is the first game. And I was feeling hyped after that game, folks. I was definitely feeling myself. So, and Gary wanted a rematch. He wanted a rematch. So I gave it to him. This time, I was on the white pieces. And I play e4. E4, right? G6. This is the modern defense. This is basically like if I started with d4 and then my opponent played g6. This is the king's Indian defense, right? Bishop to g7, knight c3, knight f6. This is the king's Indian defense. And you will see this later in another game that I played. We go down this line. But in this game, it's e4, g6, d4, bishop g7, and knight c3. I just developed a knight, preemptively defend this pawn because always in all these lines, this pawn is softer than this pawn because this pawn gets protected by knight and queen. And you have to put the bishop out on d3 to defend this pawn with a second piece. Knight c6, and I play knight f3. You know, the computer's suggesting different things, but like we're both just developing our pieces in what we think is an appropriate way. E6. So his intentions seem to be that he wants to play d5, but folks, let me just tell you, if he plays d5, then I'm just going to close the door on his bishop, and he might try to play f6 and try to like take with the knight, but just like I can just ignore that. And if he takes like this, then I could just take with either the knight or the pawn, putting pressure on this pin. And if, bishop to d7, I might have like some queen f3 stuff even in the future. Like it's not really too pretty for him. But yeah, bishop to e2 is what I do play in the game. And okay, I shouldn't have gone ahead, but because like what I want you to do here is if you're playing, like I'm going to flip the board, right? If you're playing as black here, what do? Like, you may be like you might want to play knight f6, just developing a knight. You might want to play d6, stopping this. Like you might play b6, bishop b7, a6, b5, like all these different ideas. Is any, like, even in the top 10 candidate moves for anyone watching this video, knight to b8? Like, why would you undevelop a knight? Why would you put it out here and then undevelop it? Like, this just doesn't make any sense. Like, he might want to play c6, d5, but like I said, after d5, I'm just going to close the door on the bishop. And it's just complete. Like, now the door is closed on the bishop, and your knight is sitting on here with a block development square on top of everything else. Like, I just don't understand it at all. I like, I always like to be polite when I'm playing these games because, like, over the board and people can see my facial expressions and stuff. But like after he played knight b8, I could not help but like squint my eyes a little bit and look at him a little funny. Like, are you sure? Like, are you sure you want to do that? But anyway, knight to b8, and then I attack the queen. I provoke f6, and then I just back up. Like, just optically, this position, like white has knight, knight, bishop, bishop, two pawns in the center, and black has three pawns near his king pushed up, as well as a bishop which is blocked in, and a knight which can't develop anywhere except this square. Like, optically, this just looks insanely good for white. a6, then he's still not developing, by the way. Like, one benefit of f6 is that he can play d5, and I can't really shut the door. He doesn't even do that. a6, castles. The castling is a little slow. Like, the computer wanted me to just bust open the center right away. And if he took, then I would take with the knight and just get a very powerful knight. And after, like, he played knight b8, possibly to prepare the move c6. But folks, if he plays c6 in this position, bishop to b3, bishop to b6 traps the queen. It's just trapped. That's crazy. So yeah, castling was a bit slow because I could have taken advantage of that. But then he goes c6. He goes c6. Like, just opening up all his dark squares over here. And could have gone e5, just, establishing a pawn on those dark squares and maybe getting takes, and like a big battery along the d file. But I play queen to d2 because usually in a lot of these lines, like, you want to play bishop to h6 and trade the dark square bishops off. But what's different about this position is usually black is castled and has a knight on f6. But the bishop h6 isn't possible here because he hasn't developed his knight. This is just like such a strange position. Like, I'm trying to apply like these things that I know from other similar positions, but it just doesn't work because he hasn't developed these pieces. d6, like, I really don't want to offend him, but like, what is this, dude? Like, why are you trying to set up a fence against me? Like, am I like your neighbor who like drives you crazy, so you build a fence so you don't have to see my house or me anymore? Like, this is kind of what he's playing like right now. Rook to d1. I just kind of put my rook in the center. b5. He's like lashing out and trying to go after my knight. But I play d5. And guess whose pawn push is stronger? d5. And I calculated in this position, by the way, that if he takes, I could take with the knight. And if he took my pawn, I take here, and the rook is trapped. He's just going to lose his rook. I calculated this in the game, right? Which is why I played d5. But he doesn't take. He plays c5. He plays c5, and he possibly wants to try to play b4. Right? And he's shutting out my bishop. So I understand that move. Takes, and I take on d6. Takes, king here, attacking my rook. And I have two options here. Basically, I could double up defending, or I could play bishop takes c5 defending and setting up a discovered threat on the king, which is what I do. Bishop to c4. Takes. There's no rush in this, by the way, right? Because I gain a tempo like here, and if he moved his king back, you just lose a bishop for no reason. So takes, and then I play rook a6, which is a check and an attack on the rook. And then I bring this rook in. I don't even take right away. I realize that this rook is not going anywhere if I'm able to bring my last attacking piece to the party with a check. And notice here, undeveloped, 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 blocked in, isolated. Black's position is a nightmare to deal with, and I have showed in this game like a practical way to destroy people who play like this. So you're welcome, I guess. Knight c6, right? Check on b5. I just get another piece involved. I bring the rook to e8. I'm planning to like maybe come down here, maybe go here. I can't go here right now because of this, but there's just lots of different threats here. And I had a quick mate in this position by sacrificing the rook. And after knight takes, then knight d6 and rook c8. This was the mate that I had, but I didn't see it. Knight takes c5. I just bring the rook in, take the bishop, check, defending the knight through the king, king b4, and then I find mate in 2, c3, and rook a7. Okay, so folks, let this be a lesson. Let this be a lesson on the importance of developing your pieces. Like, just, if you play like this, you're gonna lose most of the time. So just don't play like this, folks. All right. So after I played against Gary, I played against two people who I still don't know the names of, which I feel bad for. So I call them opponent 2 and opponent 3. So opponent 2. Now I've never played against this guy before. And he had a very peculiar manner about him. Like when he played chess, we were playing over the board, right? And every move that he made, he was playing as if he was in the World Chess Championship and he had 1 second left on the clock. Like he would take his pieces and he would slam them down on every move that he made. If he took me, the pieces would crash into each other super loud every single time. This man was absolutely fierce about it. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know what was going on, but this affected me. He got to my head a little bit because like he was being so confident. I really don't know, but him playing so aggressively and quickly, he played very fast too. He got to me, and these were the 2 worst games I played of the day. So let's jump into them. Like as you see here, I played 62.1% accuracy, and he played 59.8% accuracy. So this is a mess of a game, but we will see. So remember, every move that he's making, he's slamming the pieces down like there's no tomorrow. And it eventually got to my head. E4, C6, knight F3. This is just kind of like the standard. He plays this, he transposes into the 2 knights attack, takes, and I play a variation of the Karpov variation, where I'm going to put my knight on f6 this way and take with the knight. He plays bishop to c4, knight gf6, and d3. Right away, this seemed a bit inaccurate to me, because why would you want to do this, right? But the best move in this position was b5. It was just b5. I don't know why. b5 and then e6, just, saying, what, like, this bishop is useless now. I did not do that because I don't know why you would have to play b5 and then e6. Like, I don't know why you could just not play e6, but I take because I feel like it's good to isolate this pawn, and then I go knight f6, and I already make a horrific blunder. He, in this position, could have played, like, there is a way to win a queen in this position, folks. I want to try to make these series a little bit more interactive for the people who are watching. There is a way that white can win a queen in this position. I'll give you a few seconds to see it. It's not very obvious. I'll give you a hint. There's 2 checks, right? There's 2 checks that white can play in this position. One of them is trading the queens, and the other is sacrificing the bishop on f7. And what this does is it forces my king to take, and my queen just drops. And that, folks, is how you blunder on move 7 after you just played 2 games at over 85% accuracy against another guy. But he doesn't see that he plays the other check. He plays queen takes d8. I take, and he castles. Right, like this whole time, f7 is super weak as well. Knight takes c4. He checks, and I bring the knight back to d6. I'm like, I'm not really guarding this because of the pin, so he could still take. But I guess he was afraid that if I like played king to c7, I'd be attacking him or something. So he goes bishop to b3. He doesn't take me. Bishop to g5. Now I should have just gone f6, tried to play for e5, and gotten out of the way of this bishop. I was thinking about doing this, but I don't know why I didn't do it. Bishop to b3, bishop g4, and he plays bishop to f4. Um, I play king c7. Why did I play king c7? To defend the knight, right? But I walk into another pin and I still leave this pawn to be taken. Like, this is just a pathetic showing for me so far. h3, I take. I break his pawn structure. I don't know why he provoked this out of me. And now I should just play e6. I should just play e6 because the bishop and the king defend the knight. But I play f6 now. Of all the times where I could have played f6 before, this is now a mistake because he can nestle himself into e6 and blockade this advance. So in order to kick his bishop out, I have to play pawn to g5. Then he plays bishop h2, and I fianchetto with the intention of playing f5 and maybe taking on g7. He plays a4, rook a to d8. Now, I really don't know why I didn't do this. Like, I think him slamming the pieces was getting into my head a little bit. Rook a d8, and I play a6, just kind of stopping his advance. I almost didn't play this move because I really didn't like the hole that it created on b6, and as it turns out, that will be very bad for me later. c4. He wants to play c5, obviously, and just win the knight because of this pin, so I play c5. F5 is still good in this position apparently because after c5 you have f4, and if takes, then rook takes d6. What? And rook d6, e d6. And apparently black is doing okay because this bishop just sucks permanently now, and you can never dislodge these two pawns. c4, c5, and rook a3. He wants to like either go here or go here and kind of team up right with the rooks, right? King c6, check. And then he forces me back down. But I go king d7 instead of king c7 because I'm like, well, why did I go here? If I'm just gonna go right back to where I was before. And these are kind of like these like human considerations that we make a lot of the time in chess, like, oh, it's just I don't want to go back here because like that's where I was before. Like the computer doesn't care about that. The computer's just like, this is objectively better, Hailey. Why did you not do this? King to d7, rook b3, rook b8. I defend my pawn. What I should have done was play e5, and this completely escaped me in the game. So I really didn't like the fact that I would be undoing this knight's pawn protection, but there's really no way for him to punish me for that. Like, sure, he could take on b7, but then I could play rook b8 and like pin his bishop to the rook at some point, or just king e7, sliding out of the pin and then going here because like if he's careless, he's just gonna get pinned, right? Rook b8 takes, and king g2 takes and king g2, and I had another opportunity to play f5, but I play here, which is decent because I stop him from coming here. Wait, what's this line here? Oh yeah, king take. Yeah, so taking here was not the best move. Apparently, the computer wanted me to take here. I didn't do this because obviously I didn't like putting my king in the line of fire. But if bishop takes b7, and this is what I didn't see, I could play king to c7, double attacking the bishop, and it can't move because the rook would be hanging. But white has one saving grace in this position. If white doesn't find this move, he is completely losing. Rook to e3. Rook to e3, right? And if I take, then I lose my bishop with a fork. And if I take with the king, same thing. right? Bishop takes d6, takes, king d2, there. He takes, and we trade, and then I go there, because I'm thinking that after bishop a6, I would just get the pawn back. But wait, why does the computer not like that? Bishop a6 takes. Oh yeah, because there's bishop b5. Yeah, there's bishop b5, and it's really not good because rook e8 in here is coming, and it's just very bad. Bishop e4 takes, takes, and once again f5. F5 seems ridiculous to me in this position because I'm losing a pawn with check. But the computer says king to e7. These pawns are isolated and will be picked off. And if check, you block the bishop. Easy, right? But I didn't do that. Bishop takes a7, rook a2. I'm going after this pawn right away because he can't defend it. Check, king c7, king g3 takes, and now this move, threatening to come down and check and win my bishop. Like a common theme, like I mean not common theme. If the theme of this game for me has been this bishop. This bishop is just a garbage piece. Like it is trapped between a bunch of pawns, and it's just a liability for me. Like if my bishop was like maybe here or even here, like my position would be so much better because I wouldn't have to have such a headache trying to avoid this. King to d8, rook e6, and I play here. Because if you look at it, like, sure, I'm lining this up, but any of the discoveries that he has are not really dangerous for me. Here I take, here I take, here I just go here. He plays rook e4. By the way, instead of king d7, I should have played bishop f8. Let him take, and then we went king e7. And after rook to g6, attacking the pawn, I was supposed to play rook a1 to try to go around like this. And if he took the pawn, king f6 attacks the rook, then rook to g4, and then I was supposed to play king takes f5, rook f4 check, king e5, and it's basically just a draw, right? Rook e6, king there, boom, boom, king c6, and then I allow a huge invasion. And it's just over because my bishop is attacked, and these pieces are just way too powerful. Bishop h6, bishop e4. And if I play this, it's mate in 1. So I don't play that. d5 takes was the better move. Takes was the better move. Because after king to d6, then he could play rook e6, pick up this pawn, and attack the bishop. But he plays rook e6 right away. I go back, he takes, and I play bishop f8. I play bishop f8, and I'm going to wrap around here, give a check, and my rook can still come around like this and try to pressure him from the backside. Rook takes f6, I check. He goes up. I swing my rook around. Rook f7 check, king, or bishop e7, and folks, in this position, my opponent played the move king takes g5. And as you can see, it is an illegal move. And there is a rule in over the board chess is that if your opponent makes an illegal move and you call him out on it, then the person who made the illegal move loses the game. So he went here, and I was like, are you sure you can do that? And he said, yeah, I'm sure. And I said, are you absolutely 100% certain that you can do that? And then he just looked at me. He looked at me blankly, and he was like, oh, wait. Yeah. Well, good game. You win. So, yeah, that's how that game ended. So, even though I was losing, he played an illegal move against me and I won. So I maintained my undefeated streak by not failing to question his certainty about that being a legal move. And we play another game because we can't end on something like that, right? And this game was equally crazy. All right, let me just load up the review. switch the board around, and as you can see, their accuracies are a little bit better from both sides. I'm starting to adjust a little bit to his super aggressive moving. He's a little flustered from making an illegal move and then not knowing that it was an illegal move until I questioned him on it. E4, E5. So this is, I played the second game, like these were two games as black, so I didn't want to go down the same line, so I decided to vary it up a little and go E5. Knight F3, Knight C6, and he just goes A3. Like, the main move by far in this position is Bishop C4. Or you could go Bishop B5, which is what I play. But Bishop C4, this is like the beginner game. This is the Italian game, and I usually like to play Bishop C5 against this position, and after Bishop C5, there's a bunch of moves. You can play D3, which is the Gioco Pianissimo. You can castle, right? You can play C3 and D4. You can play B4, which is the Evans Gambit, which is a fun line. But he plays A3. And I was assuming that the purpose of A3 was after I played Bishop C5 to play B4. But he did not do that. He instead just put his bishop out. Like, he's just trying to play a normal game after just playing A3 on move 3. Like, this is just very strange. So I bring my knight out, I attack his pawn, he defends it. Very solid. H6, I am up one piece in development on him, so I am able to use a tempo to improve my position and lock down the G5 square. Castles, castles, Knight C3, D6. This is what a lot of people, like a lot of attacking players, like really don't like playing E4, E5 positions like this because of how symmetrical they can get. But I really like these positions because it just kind of, it's basically the first person who makes a positional mistake usually loses, right? It's not like there's like these super tactical lines. So he goes 92, which I didn't quite know why, but I felt like he wanted to play this and this. So as soon as he takes his eye off of this square, I'm like, can't I just play D5? Not sure why I didn't go Bishop G4 in this position. I think I looked at it briefly. I really don't know what I didn't like. I think I didn't like that he could go like here and here or something. Like I have no idea. I'm just threatening to destroy his structure. But anyway, D5, right? Takes. And I kind of clarify the situation in the center a little bit and have a half-open E-file. Knight G3, Bishop G4, I pin now, and he plays H3. Very solid. Takes. This is not a good decision for me because I just invite a ton of pressure on my knight, and I have to back up. He plays knight f5, and I go here. I'm attacking his knight, and I'm attacking his queen. And then something absolutely stupid happens in this position. He plays queen to G3. And here's another interactive moment. Find the winning move for black. I'll give you a hint. It is not knight takes knight, which is what I play in the game. The winning move for black is this. And you just pick up the queen because it's a fork. It's very simple, but I just got distracted by him hanging the knight, so I just take it. I take the knight, and it's still even after queen takes here, forking bishop and knight, which I did not see. But instead he plays queen to h2 because he's flustered about having lost this. Maybe he saw knight e2, maybe he was just super anxious about it, and he just got flustered, right? Knight d4, queen takes, and now I have a sneaky little tactic here, which is bishop d6. Because he can't take because of bishop h2, and I pick up the queen with the discovered attack. But queen takes c5, and then I take here instead, attacking the rook while he attacks my bishop. He moves the rook, and then I play bishop to d6. This is a more solid way to do it, but I could have just like set a trap. You know? Queen e2, rook to e8. Like I said, him playing super aggressively threw me off, and it made my brain kind of go crazy sometimes. I just am like, here, I'm improving my position and attacking the queen. Remember that knight I put there, literally a move earlier? It's free. And now I'm flustered. So, yeah, the game will definitely show both of our flusteredness. Queen to e7, Bishop e3, just kind of blocking the file, right? B6. Whoa, whoa. I turned on the play button here. Queen e7, bishop e3, b6, right? I'm going to play like bishop c5 or something. What I should have done was just go here and set up a checkmate threat and then go here attacking the h3 pawn. I do something similar to that later, but I could have done it right there. b6, queen dd2. Now I set up the checkmate threat. Pawn to g3 is played, and in this position I could have played queen f5. I could have played queen f5 hitting this square, and then this pawn. It's a little pressure, but instead I play knight h5, which sets up a sacrifice, which like if he does nothing in this position, knight takes g3, f takes g3, queen takes king h1 and queen that's not possible, but instead I would just play queen h3, pick up another pawn, and then lift my rook up, and it's very bad. Right? That's what I saw. He takes! So we're both setting up sacrifices around the king, but his doesn't work at all. Because when you sacrifice, a key thing to remember is, like, you may be putting your queen next to my king, but do you have any other attacking forces? This rook is not attacking. This rook is way over here. This bishop isn't really attacking anything. You're not attacking my knight. You have nothing. Right? And I could have played queen f5 in this position, just doing the same thing, right? And he has nothing. But after that, I sacrifice on g3 because I'm like, well, he can check me on g6, exploiting this pin, but then I just go like king f8. There's mate. But then when I saw that, I was like, well, can't I just go king h8 and queen h6 here, and then maybe after this I can block with the queen? The problem with blocking with the queen is bishop takes f7. Bishop takes f7. And then after this, f takes g3, and I'm completely losing because of this lineup. But then, what about king h8? The problem with king h8 is you lose the rook. Right? And if this, then this, and if this, then this. And your knight is still hanging. But queen to g6, he doesn't play in the game. Instead, knight takes g3, he plays bishop takes f7, which just doesn't work at all because he doesn't have any like follow-up way to attack my king. So what happens here is that he takes with check. Like, all hell is breaking loose right now. Like, our kings are both being attacked with sacrificial ideas, but he takes with check and he thinks this is really dangerous, but it's actually not because my king runs over here and there's no checks left for him, and I'm still lined up like this and I'm still just attacking his king. A4 takes here, and rook g8. I line up a discovery. King h1, bishop here. I just go king b7, connecting the rooks and trying to bring them here. Rook f7. I try to set up this check, maybe. Check. I bring this rook because he is attacking the c7 pawn. b5, controlling the light squares in front of my king, but that's nothing really to be concerned about. I go here threatening to trade off the rooks because this bishop is here. Rook c4 here. Check with the bishop. Here, check with the rook, and then here. And this may look bad because the bishop is being hit and it's the defender of this, but I just back up to d6. Also, of note, I could have played this, and he can't take my bishop because he just lose the rook. King f5, bishop d6, and the game ends. After check, he brings his king all the way down next to my king, and then I bring the rooks like this, just pressuring him, and then he plays this. Another moment for the audience. Find the checkmate in one. It's not really that obvious. It's not this, because you lose this. It's not this, because you just lose that. Rook e7 is made in one, because this, and this are all guarded. Okay. Oh boy, those two games were very chaotic, and now we just hop into the final game of the day against opponent 3. This guy hasn't showed up for a while. It's been a couple weeks since this guy's been here. but him and me always have good games against each other. So I wanted to play him as part of my last game. As you see here by the accuracy, we both played pretty well. So this game is going to be pretty entertaining. So I'm just kind of feeling myself today. I'm like winning all my games. I'm 4-0. So I play D4. I usually play E4, but I want to mix it up. I play D4. And like I said earlier, we get into a King's Indian. We get into a King's Indian defense. And my favorite weapon against the King's Indian defense is what is known as the four pawns attack. And it is called that because you push four pawns and attack the king. Castles, knight f3, bishop to g4. And in this position, I make a strange decision. I instead of playing bishop to e2, which is just the standard move, getting in front of this pin and preparing castling, I didn't like something or other about bishop to e2. I don't remember what I didn't like. Instead, I played h3, takes, takes. And the reason you can't do this is because e5. F takes c5, d takes c5, d takes c5, and knight f d7. You're attacking this, and then the f pawn is ready to push up and open up on that queen. That is the refutation. Queen takes f3, knight to c6. We're just both developing our pieces. I push a little prematurely. I invite his knight into the middle of the board. Queen to f2 is the only move because he was threatening a fork and my queen. So queen f2 defends both. Now things get a little weird. He plays knight to d7, of course, defending his knight. I play bishop to e3, attacking his knight twice, and whatever of these pawns he pushes, I can en passant him. But for some reason, we both have a mutual blindness event here. Because I'm just like, well, after en passant, I'm just going to gain the knight back. But for some reason, both of us missed that he could just take the knight. Like, what? Like, we both missed that. But so he proved my calculation in the game. I did not even figure out that he could take because he snaps back with the f pawn, and I just. Oh, it's funny when moments of mutual blindness like that happen because you don't even know. Like it's like so like it's basically just like, oh, that was the best move. Like Hailey was just gonna win a piece because of that. Like, oh, it's funny. Takes, and I'm dominating the dark squares over here. Queen h4 check, and I'm perfectly satisfied to just lose a pawn and go up into the center of the board like this, just attacking the rook. Rook a to f8, bishop to e2. And then I'm just going to put my rook here, and I'm going to trade down the f-file, and I'm just going to be a piece up. Knight e5, go here, takes, a6. And I'm just a piece up. Like, it's going to be pretty hard for him to win this. But the game still goes on for a little bit longer. King f4, c5. He's just trying to lock down these dark squares, right? Bishop to e2. King f7, we're both trying to get our kings involved. G4, h6, h5. King f6, stopping this, right? Knight to d1. My idea here after knight to d1 was to play knight here and try to trade this knight like this. But what I should have done was g5. Takes, and then king e7, and I would have had a better position because his king is super passive. Knight f4, knight b6 would just be pretty good in this position. Knight d1, g5 takes, and king e3. Then he goes back to c6. I bring my knight to f2, and he goes here. And I'm like, well, the pawn is defending the knight. And if the pawn wasn't defending the knight, I could take with the king. So let's go b4, because if he takes, then I get the knight. But what I missed in this position is knight c2 check, and he just picks up the pawn with the knight. And I was a little bit upset after this. King to d2, knight takes b4. I'm a little demoralized, but I'm holding on because I'm still up a pawn after all. Or up the equivalent of a pawn, because I have a piece for two pawns. He has 2 pawns for my piece, so it's a 1 point difference. Knight c6, knight d3. What I'm doing here with knight d3 is I'm stopping his king from coming. Like you see here how I'm blockading his king, right? Knight d4, bishop d1, right? Bishop d1. I'm just, getting out of the way of the knight because I wasn't confident that if he traded, I would be much better. b5. I thought b5 was a good move in this position because my idea was always to go like here, here, and here and try to invade like this. b5 kind of puts a stop to that because takes and pawn takes, and he's just kind of controlling these squares. But instead of that, he plays knight takes b5, allowing me to play a4, knight d4, king c3. I played king c3, and in this position, he played king to e5. My opponent played king to e5. And I was like, well, I just was like, king to e5. This is a very good move because he's just gonna take my pawn and no, whatever. And then he noticed that he played the incorrect move and he moved back here. And I think that if the person who played the illegal move notices, it's not a loss for them. So the game still went on. But he didn't know that rule, and I didn't bring it up because I didn't notice that it was an illegal move. Because I was just like, "Oh, king to e5. This is a very good move. Like he's stopping like all my ideas, and he's just gonna walk on in and take my pawns." Then he notices that he made an incorrect move and plays a5. What is going on, dude? King c4. Like, I think we were both tired at this point because I was just like, I didn't notice at all. Because I had played this because I'm like, I'm stopping his king from coming in. And then he plays this, and I'm like, he has countered me. Whatever will I do? Yeah, I was kind of tired. a5, king c4, knight c6. He backs up knight c6. I thought was a little inaccurate because I could just go here and hit this and this. And it turns out that I'm completely right about that. Knight b4 and takes. And he originally took here, and then he was like, "Well, can I get a take back because here and these pawns are guarded?" But the truth is, there's really no difference because after c takes b4, the game went king takes here, takes and a5, and he resigned because I'm just gonna push the pawn and make a queen, and he is not fast enough. But if he took with the a pawn instead, like I'm just gonna make a queen and he's too slow. It's the same thing basically. So with that, folks, I hope you have enjoyed these videos this video as much as I have. These are some crazy games, and I will see you in the next video.